Hello. I'm making a video and I want to talk about how to create a paradise in this video. There are many things that I have been wanting to talk about. I took mental notes of that, but then I didn't get around to make the video in over a week, seems like last video I've made was almost two weeks ago. So, and then every day I'm busy with different things, and then I forget what I wanted to talk about in the next video. All of these different subjects that I want to discuss in the video, like the dissolution of the idea of self. The idea of self, the self, is only an idea. Okay, so that I need to get into. I want to get into artwork, what it feels like to create modern art. I want to get into robotics, what needs to happen. I talked about these things many times, but I guess there are new developments that are happening in the AI world. And there's a good development happening in world politics right now, so very positive. Most people are not going to view that as positive. Trust me on that. I already know that China is very steadily and very gradually buying the entire planet Earth. It's happening, okay? I view that as positive. Why do I view that as positive? Number one, I'm not a nationalist. I'm not patriotic in that nationalistic type of sense, okay? I'm not even patriotic. I am matriotic. I'm a mother bear who cares about all living beings, but that goes beyond any kind of society. That doesn't have borders, okay? It goes around the whole globe in every direction, or all globally, worldwide, and then it goes also interstellar. So, whatever living beings are out there, I feel for all of them. I really do. So, that is my matriarchy. Okay. That is probably not how other people use that word, but that's how I view matriarchy. Matriarchy is something that men need to learn from women. Okay, so very, very important that we need to include all beings into our hearts and not just the ones in your nation. That gets a thumbs down from me, okay. Like when people go to the military, thumbs down, viewing things like our nation good, others bad. That gets a thumbs down. Okay, so I'm not up for that. Okay, so matriarchy, up. Thumb up. Okay, so matriarchy in the sense that I'm talking about. So the mother bear, that cares about all living beings. Okay, the mother bear, the mother dog, mother dinosaur. I don't know how the mother dinosaurs felt. And I don't even go all the way back to that era. But I know how the mammals are feeling. So during the Jurassic, there were the very first rudimentary, like the primordial mammals, right? They were still reptiles, sort of, but they were starting to become mammals at that time. So that was a very gradual process. And as they became more mammalian, with giving birth to a baby that had a little bit placenta on it, which used to be the eggshell, so that become really soft. And then feeding with the boobs, okay? So breastfeeding, very, very important. So the reptiles apparently don't do that, so I don't think they have breasts. Chicken breasts. but those are not boobs. That's just fat, and that's wrong, okay? To overfeed an animal like this for your consumption, it's all wrong. It's all wrong to hurt another living being, okay? That's my true sense of matriarchy. So, I also want to get into the subject of what's beyond this existence. Some people will naively say there's heaven. Some people more naively say there's hell. So no, there's just, if you want to call it heaven, there's heaven. We see into the heavens, right? From any angle on the planet, all the way around. Everywhere you stand on this globe, you look up, you see heaven, okay? You don't see hell, okay? So if you put someone in a dungeon, that means like the catacombs, that those were always like souterrain or cellar, like underground. That's hell. So if you want to call that hell, hell is what people create here on earth. Maybe they will dig very deep, like the coal miners, for example. That nice song from Tennessee, Ernie Ford, 16 Tons, which I call the communist song, but very, very loose description of it. Because that was, I don't know when he sang the song, in the 50s, that was the very first criticism of society exploiting others, So that's obviously not communism. It is something that can give rise to it. It's something that can give rise to a social restructuring and an uproar and a reform and so on. And that is what happened in Russia and in a lot of Eastern Bloc countries. A reform. But every reform, as Jiddu Krishnamurti always said, what does a reform do? A reform just reforms it, and then there is the mental illness hasn't healed. That's underneath. So then there'll be the same structure again, just with a different face. That's all it is. So it will always dwindle back into corruption. But yeah, the 16 tons, the coal miner song, coal mining, digging down into the ground, that's hell. But that's human created, right? So the core of this planet is still liquid. It's still a lava. It's not like the sun, it's cooler than the sun, but it is that is where the earth is still hot, in the center of the earth. That's why you can't just drill through the whole planet and come out the other end. No, obviously you would liquefy on your way, right? And everything you bring along, any kind of spaceship you bring along, would liquefy as well. Or any kind of probe that you sent down, maybe with a robot or something, would liquefy. No, it's lava at the Earth's core. So that Earth's core used to be much bigger. So that's why millions of years ago, or maybe a billion years ago, rather, or 2 billion years ago, there were a whole lot of volcanoes, because the Earth's crust that we sit on was not as cooled down. It wasn't as thick as it is now, where you can basically drill down for many, many miles, and you might hit oil or hot water. So hot water, that's the solution, geothermal energy and geothermal water healing. So that's not hell. Okay, that is heaven on earth. Geothermal water and sulfur, very healing. Okay, so some people they like in ancient times they would equate that with something that comes from hell or something, or they hear some kind of geothermal activity or some kind of mud pots or geothermal heat fissures, that draw out heat and gases and hot water from further down in the earth. And then people think this is somehow from hell. No, that's not hell. That has nothing to do with hell. I mean, it can get hellishly hot where you can pass out, which many of those coal miners have. They have coal miners and also quarry miners and rock miners and mineral miners around the whole globe. When they go deeper down into caves that go down, they can pass out because there's less oxygen, there is less livability, there is very condensed air, and there is also there is condensedness of Earth. There is gravitational condensedness, so that there's pressure actually. So all of that is not beneficial, and they didn't get enough oxygen that would go into those tunnels, and many of them passed out and died. Okay, now that's very hellish, but that's still not hell. So hell is, but that's where people get the idea from, but it's not hell. Hell is when people exploit others and send others down into quarries and into coal mining tunnels. That's hell. Exploitation is hell. It is created by humans, by greedy humans. Greed is hell. Okay, so I want people to really understand that completely, fully. What does it mean to go into the beyond? I want to start with that subject. I really want to explore into this. What does it mean, you take your spacesuit off, you go into the unknown, the Earthian spacesuit that is your body, and then you venture out into heaven, into space, into orbit, into intergalactic space, interstellar space, and you can basically go anywhere you want to, and you can just keep on going, your soul, so I feel very close connection to the Orion Nebula. I don't know why, so that's why I think that is where my soul has been many times, as a form of resting place. Yeah. heaven at the Orion Nebula. And I think a lot of souls gather there and go there, and we meet our dogs there and family and all of them. And they suddenly, they say, I'm so infinitely sorry how I was selfish and how I was self-centered and blinded by my ego, by my idea of self, and by this incessant need and the addiction to whatever people are addicted to. Climbing Mount Everest, that's an addiction to some people. Okay, how can some addiction come about like this? How does this happen even? I could never understand it. And then Jiddu Krishnamurti talked about it, and he said, people want to become. And that's an idea. That's the idea of self. Okay, I want to become something. Get a diploma, have this little piece of paper. This is my diploma. I'm a Diplom-Psychologin now. And I hang it on the wall. Now, I dropped out before that for different reasons. Mental illness. And also, I didn't see the point anymore. Our clinical psychologist professor, doctor, two doctors she has, that feeds the sense of self, the idea of self, but no, she deserved it. Professor Dr. Monika Pritzel, famous person actually in the field of psychology and neuroscience. So she also has that medical diploma, of course, the medical doctor, and the psychology doctor, the PhD. So, and then with that, she was very interested in neuroscience and kept going into all of this. But she said to us, and I really appreciate that she did, quite in the beginning, within the first year, she told us that it was harsh for her. It was harsh. Because obviously she has compassion, and she was going into this phase, I think they call it practica. It's like a year of going into research in order to complete her studies and her dissertation. And she said that wasn't for the medical science, that wasn't for the medical study, that was for psychology. Because, I think you might be able to navigate into a specific direction with this at the end. But I was like her, I was interested what's going on inside of the brain. Everything else is like tapping kind of in the dark. That's what makes this into a scientific field also. Statistics also, of course, that's another thing. But I'm not very interested in math, and that's very tedious. So I wasn't really sure, I was not sure whether I can handle it. I got very suicidal. And when she told us that she could not handle this at all psychologically, when they had to do tests on rhesus monkeys, and she talked about the tests, that was kind of it for me. So I was like, okay, I appreciate that she told us that, but I'm gonna have to leave. I can't do this. I don't see the point in it. And also the loneliness, the mental illness, there was absolutely zero emotional support. The only little bits and pieces of emotional support we got were from other students. And there weren't very many that were altruistic and kind and that would hold my hand during during a seminar or something like this, and then everyone staring at us because she was holding my hand, because I wasn't feeling good. You know, people are, they immediately come to conclusions and, oh, what's going on with them? Are they dating each other? No, we weren't dating each other. No. We're both fully straight. And she had a boyfriend, and then she would always be with the boyfriend during the weekends, and nobody wanted me, so I was like the wallflower, and I was totally alone. I dated a Nigerian man for a day or two or three or something like that. That didn't last very long until he said some really, really horrific stuff. He said that women should suffer, and I was like, okay, there's the door. Bye-bye. And don't come back. Okay, so, well, that was pretty much my dating life. And yeah, I also found a man from India. I visited my therapist in Geneva. So there was a guy from India, and he was very, very nice. But he was in Geneva, and so that didn't have any future either, because obviously I wasn't moving to Geneva. Yeah, but he was nice, and I talked to him on the phone, and that was very nice. That one weekend on New Year's in Geneva was my Indian boyfriend. That was very sweet. So, no, the German men are not into me. German men like Latino women and black women. Okay. And they also go for Turkish women. So, or like anyone who has a little bit darker skin and looks a little bit more not German. So that's what they like. They don't like German women that much, particularly not overweight ones. And particularly not weird ones. So no, that's like total taboo. So yeah, that left me completely alone. And I just couldn't do it. And then thinking about the rhesus monkey test that they have to do, there's no way I can do it. If I ever went into a lab for any reason, whether I'm the floor cleaning lady, or some graduate student, or getting into whatever, a dissertation or whatever, it wouldn't matter what the reason is, I am entering those places. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to open those cages. And I'm going to let the animals out. And then they're going to be hitting me with crowbars, the people in there. They're going to call the police. They're going to shackle me down to the ground. And yeah, and then I go to prison, and it's not going to be nice. Probably going to end up gruesome or something. I don't even want to think about it. Because I have a medusa inside of me that could come out, if I'm being physically attacked. So, and it's my mother instinct will do it, will take over, no matter what the situation is. It wouldn't matter if I was this close to my doctorate degree, and it would just take one more week of gruesome testing on rhesus monkeys, and then you got your diploma and you can hang it on the wall. No. You can shred that diploma. You can stick it on your hat, as Ernie said. Ernie said that to Mr. Hoover. You can stick your diploma on your head. I don't want it. I don't want that friggin' ugly diploma hanging on the wall. I think that's ugly to hang something like this on the wall, and some kind of my achievements. Okay, so now that's the idea of self. A diploma on the wall or an Oscar on your fireplace, or or a Grammy award, or whatever, your dissertation, your UN Nobel Peace Prize, or whatever people put up on the fireplace ornamental shelf, and then they dust that every day and they worship it and they put candles around it and they go, that's me, that's who I am, I consist of, that's what I consist of. If I didn't consist of that diploma, then who would I be, right? That's the idea of self. It could also be, a criminal, who doesn't even know anything about diplomas. A criminal who comes from a real dysfunctional household, never learned what love is. And also has a lot to do with the brain anatomy. Okay, I do not want to underestimate the brain anatomy here, and that's genetics. But someone like this, they see people, they watch fast car movies, they watch criminal type of movies, and they worship the mafia, and they think that's manly, and they think this is how they're supposed to be. Their dad conditioned them into that direction, and then they will actually put their arrest warrant on the wall. Okay, they will put a newspaper article of the murder of Gianni Versace. Okay, he will clip every newspaper article about Gianni Versace's death. Okay, in front of his house in Miami. Okay, at the steps that go up to the walkway in front of the gate. That's where he was shot to death. And the guy who shot him, he will clip out every single newspaper article about it. He will collect all of them. It's a trophy. Okay, he'll collect all of this. He might hang it on the wall. Murderers, they will hang up photos of the victims on the wall. That's me. I did this. This is me. This is who I am, right? They will also say. A hunter will say, "Well, go away, Karen. This is what I do. I like to do this. This is me. My identity." Ooh, right? The identity of being a murderer. Okay. But in principle, it is exactly the same as the diploma from the university, the UN Peace Prize, all of that. It functions in the same way, okay? And it is extremely dangerous. Extremely dangerous. I hope I make sense here. Whether it is your Nobel Peace Prize that you hang up on the wall, or the victims' photos from the newspaper, your victims that you have murdered, you hang them on the wall. Hunters decapitate and hollow out the head of a deer or of a moose or a Taurus or an Aries or whatever they are hunting down, right? And they hang that up. This is exactly the same thing. The same thing as the mass murderer hanging up on the wall the victims' photos. Okay, these are trophies. The Nobel Peace Prize is a trophy. The diploma is a trophy. This is extremely dangerous. Okay, this is so dangerous that seemingly harmless people who have never murdered before can potentially become a murderer. If someone was to withhold that trophy from them that they think they rightly earned. I'm not saying everyone is like this, but there's a lot of people that are like this. A lot. And if we can meditate and dissolve the idea of self before it escalates into this direction, then it wouldn't escalate to that point also in newer beginner souls, okay? It's not easy. It is not easy to talk about this. It's not easy to make this judgment, because I am not a beginner soul, so I can't understand anymore what it is like to be a beginner soul, but I used to be a beginner soul, and I'm sure that I was no different to any other beginner soul when I was a beginner soul, right? There's no telling what lifetimes I have run through and what existences I have lived and what animals I have been and what kind of people I were in past lifetimes and what I've done in the name of nationalism, patriotism, my clan, my cult, my religion, my nation, my ethnicity, and so on. The identification was something like this. Some people identify with being a murderer. Some people identify with being a prestigious scientist with diplomas on the wall. Some people identify as gurus. Very, very dangerous right there. This is even more dangerous because they come at it thinking they're doing good. They come at it thinking they are now going into their own minds, and it's still not going into their own minds. The moment you are after enlightenment, you're doing exactly the same thing as the mass murderer does, going after this momentary sense of power, or medical doctor with achievements, money, accumulation, famous. Exact same thing. Okay? They have not, I heard there was this, I heard a lot of people talk about different gurus and heard the gurus talk, and what I see in those people is, in most gurus that think they're coming closer to the inwardness process, they will call it enlightenment, and the moment that word even comes across their lips, I'm like, okay, I get it. I better turn this off now before I get upset. So, because then I know they are after this, they are still in this draw of becoming someone, of making something out of their lives in terms of the idea of self, okay? I can make something out of my life in terms of I make my life better. Also money, if we use it wisely, we work hard, we earn money, we make our lives better, we help others, okay? That's the path forward. The moment we have to brag, the moment we go on TikTok or Instagram with our Chanel sunglasses, that's when you know you are not on the right path here. Okay, so that's when you know it. I mean, there's nothing wrong with having a pair of Chanel sunglasses if you have so much money available. It doesn't matter to you. It's like for me, it's the same as for me going to the Dollar Tree store and buying sunglasses for $1.25, right? So, and they will spend $5,000 or more on a pair of sunglasses. If it's peanuts for them, why not? Okay, so, but the moment they have to brag, that's where they're on the wrong track about it. And then some people, they will still misunderstand the whole thing. Some people will go into a direction where they go like, I want to be understated. And then they tell everyone how understated they are. I know people very, 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 very close to me that are doing this. And I'm not condemning them. I am not putting them into the catacombs of my brain. Okay, no. The catacombs of my brain has my childhood trauma. And they may be in it sometimes, okay. But not in that sense. So I know they are suffering. And I love them infinitely much, and I want to help them as much as I can, but I observe them and I see they are drawn away. Again, they think they're humble, and then the humbleness becomes unhumbleness. And that's the same mechanism that happens with every single guru also. I am so humble, I've achieved enlightenment. No, you are not humble, okay? You put yourself on a pedestal, okay? The Dalai Lama is not humble, okay? I'm sorry to disappoint a lot of people with this. A lot of people get so mad if I criticize the Dalai Lama, like, thou shall not criticize the Dalai frickin' Lama, right? Wrong. You have to criticize the Dalai Lama frickin' animal tester. Okay, so you have to. He thinks it's okay to test on animals. He thinks it's okay to test on 100 animals to get some kind of medical accomplishment to help thousands of animals. No, that's not okay. It's not okay with me. Okay, maybe some people call it utilitarianism. I am not a utilitarianist. Again, when it comes to that bridge dilemma, the bridge dilemma in psychology, would you throw a fat man over the bridge to stop a train and to prevent the death of thousands of people and animals? Or would you just let the train go its path and then get drive over those car wrecks that are on the train track and then fall over and go up in flames and stuff like that. So there's a lot of utilitarianists that will say that they will push over that fat man over the railing and then they feel like a hero. So, no, I could not do this. I can't do it. I don't sacrifice anyone. I can't sacrifice anyone. I couldn't. I can't. And then there are other dilemma situations that they bring up in order to test people's judgment of a situation when the situation is not direct like this. So like in a situation where, baby dog, it is enough now. It's enough. Like a situation where, for example, let's take drone flyers. There are people that are working for the military that sit in some kind of office somewhere in the United States and that remote control drones in Afghanistan, for example. So, but that takes us also into another direction. That takes us also into the direction of criminality, of course, into cluster B. But let's stick with this example of a remote judgment. Like, you're not personally involved in it. You're not there at the battlefield. You are not in front of a fat man that could be thrown over the railing or could not be thrown over the railing. Okay, so you're not physically involved in a dilemma situation. How would you react if you knew that, let's take a train example, to stick with the same thing so we don't have too many of those diffusing variables in this comparison, in this control comparison. So in order to test your judgment, if you're not personally involved, if you are in a different location, but you were the one who had remote control over that situation on whether the train is gonna drive into that car accident and then maybe fall over and then thousands of people and animals would die. Or if you could remote control that train and let's say, I'm just coming up with this right now, to make this as close of a match to the first scenario. So let's say there is a fat construction worker that is working somewhere between the train, where the train is right now, and the accident a couple of miles ahead of the train. There's a fat construction worker instead of the bridge, right? It's a fat construction worker and he is working there on something on the train rail, but he's not fixing the train rail. He's just picking something up, or maybe he's just picking up trash that people threw out there. And you have control over bullet drones, okay? And you can fly a bullet drone or another drone or whatever, and you can navigate the drone over to that person that is picking up trash, and you could potentially kill that person with the bullet drone or any other drone, and then that fat man is there directly on the train track, those iron rails, okay, and if the train finally gets there, the train will be slowly stopped by that fat man, and you would potentially have saved thousands of lives down the line. Okay, so now these two scenarios have very different outcomes. In psychology, when people are being tested, when people fill out these ethics tests that psychology students and professors have conducted, okay, in the field of psychology, because they want to know how people react differently if they are not personally directly involved with it. So it turned out, maybe you guessed it already, it turned out that way more people would remote control the drone to kill the fat man and stop the train this way than they would in an imaginary scenario be confronted in person on top of a bridge, knowing the situation that is coming up, knowing they could push the fat man over the railing. So most people don't push the fat man over the railing, but most people will kill the fat man with a drone. So obviously that is also not a very clean-cut example, because there's another variable that is in psychology, is full of these diffusing variables. I know that from statistics very well, because that's what makes it so difficult, to find examples, whether they're actual field tests with people or just thought experiments. There are very few of those situations that have a very clean-cut comparison. So where you really minimize the amount of and the severity of those diffusing variables that will come in. So the diffusing variable in this case, I don't even know if this is the right terminology, I just know the word Störfaktor from psychology in Germany, because I studied it in Germany. So Störfaktor, it's like, it's a factor that plays in that is disturbing the situation, that's disturbing the actual scientific outcome, it's diffusing and disturbing or muddying the clarity of what you're observing. So are you observing the right thing here, or is the diffusing variable coming in? In this particular dilemma situation, call it the diffusing variable, is that besides the point that the agent, the murdering agent, that's what they're trying to find out, right? So whether you would do this in person or you would do it in remote. So obviously most people do it remote. They had some other examples also. I don't really recall how these examples were, how they designed them. They probably eliminated those diffusing variables as much as they could. But this example that I am bringing up, like that I made up, is that brings quite a diffusing variable into it, because it is very different alone already whether you physically push someone with your hands over the railing, and I'm not showing you, and that person is then being squashed by the train, and it is a gruesome situation, right? Or you do a clean shot, with the bullet thrown into the head, and the person doesn't even know what happened, right? And the person falls over and is unconscious, and when the train comes then this is not some kind of unbelievably horrific event for that person. He doesn't have to consciously experience it. So that's the disturbing variable that plays in, which definitely also changes people's minds on whether they do this situation or the other. So that aggravates the situation of pushing the fat man over the railing, because then the fat man is still fully conscious while he's experiencing this situation. So with the bullet drone, this person is knocked out of consciousness. He doesn't experience anything. So that would not hold up as the perfect comparison, because then we don't know which one is the disturbing variable responsible, to how much of a degree is the disturbing variable responsible for the statistical outcome. So for people making the decision to rather use the drone rather than pushing the man over the railing. So we want to know, because the psychologists want to know, how far does it make a difference between being directly there, having to push someone with your own hands, versus being in a different place altogether and just being the operator of a remote controlled machine, maybe in a different country or something. So if we want to eliminate the diffusing variable, and this is a little sneak peek into psychology statistics, and this is what makes this into a scientific field, because we want to compare different situations and eliminate these things that make the comparison not so visible, right? We want to really have good visibility of a comparison. Like, what would people do? We want, because we already have a hypothesis that says we think that people are probably more likely to push the fat man over the railing if they are not physically there, right? So like with the bullet drone, but the bullet drone doesn't hold up because it changes the outcome, because it changes the statistics of it. Because that would be another thing to study then as a comparison too, But if we want to have a very clean-cut comparison where the person is not directly involved, where the person is remote controlling a machine, then we would probably have to use a person that is remote controlling a robot, a humanoid robot, who comes up to the top of that bridge and who then pushes the fat man over the railing. So that would be a better comparison to the first one, because then you don't have that variable in where the man is instantly out of consciousness. Then in that situation, the man falls over the railing exactly the same way as in the first example and is not knocked out of consciousness. So there are all these things that have to be taken into account when we study psychology, when we want to evaluate how people react in any given situation. Do they react differently if they are remote controlling something versus if they are there physically in person in a specific situation like a battlefield or something, So how would they function then? So, but it turns out that people function very, very differently when they feel like they're in a safe place remote controlling something versus being directly physically in person involved in a situation. So people chicken out in an in-person situation much quicker than in a remote controlled situation. I personally would also not remote control a machine to push the fat man over or kill some kind of railroad worker that is picking up trash, right? I couldn't do it. For me, it's basically the same situation, yeah, for me personally, but for most people it wouldn't be. And that also tells you that most people will probably not push the fat man over the railing with their bare hands for completely different reasons than I would not push the fat man over the railing. So then there are some utilitarianists who would push the fat man over the railing because they just put all of that aside, and the gruesomeness and the suffering of the man and all of that, because they see a larger picture of saving thousands in the course of this action. So I am not a utilitarianist, and I could never be one. I mean, I don't honor a utilitarianist. I don't condemn them either. I don't know what to say to that, you know. That's just where I am psychologically, where I'm mentally. Okay, I couldn't do this. I think it's gruesome to murder someone for any reason. Okay. So then you can go deeper into this kind of subject, and you can study and see, would you do it if you can rescue your dog, okay, or your horse? Now then that takes on a completely another level. Okay. So then it becomes something else. It's not the same situation as before. And I am only saying this out of my personal subjective brain state. You know, I don't know if my brain state is the non plus ultra, the maximum of ethics or whatever. I have never even claimed it. Okay, I'm just saying this is where I'm at. I'm the animal mother. If I have to do something like this to save my dog, I don't even want to, I'd rather not even go mentally into a situation like this. You know, that reminds me a whole lot of these, when we were children, and I'm sure that went around the whole world, this type of thing, when kids do these prank questions, and they say, would you rather whatever, do something real, lick out the nose of a dead man, or would you rather be hit by a car and break your leg, or something, some kind of absolute, like, two horrible situations, right? And then take your pick, which one do you choose? You know, I hated those questions because I don't like that at all. And I also hate dilemma questions in the same way, you know. Dilemma is like where, you know, you do this and then you have to deal with that, or you do this and you have to deal with that, you know. That's the dilemma. So you have to make up your mind, okay, which is more important to you in that friction of a moment. Okay. So, and I'm saying this now in that mental state that I have right now, But I don't even know how I would react if I actually was confronted with a situation like this. I don't know. I'm just guessing on this, right? That could be completely different yet again. But in psychology, people just want to know how people are evaluating such a situation. What kind of mental state they have, how they evaluate ethics and so on. What's ethical for me may not be ethical for someone else. So there seems to be having a lot of variation among humans, okay? This seems to be very subjective with everyone, and people call it relative. Call this relativism, like where who am I or who are you to say, oh, I'm going to judge over you for how you behaved in that situation. So I'm fairly tolerant when it comes to this, but I'm not a relativist at all. Not at all. I'm a totalitarian. So I'm an animal mother. Okay, that is my number one psychological state. That is my philosophy. That is my ethics. That's where I'm coming from, and that's how I evaluate every situation. Political, sociological, economical, ecological. Okay, so this is how I view the world through my particular brain. Okay, but I am very well aware that that is not how other people view it, and that's not how most people view it. So I would be very interested what other people have to say about these type of situations. So how would you react in a situation like this? Would you push a fat man over the railing? And then also, how would you do it if you were remote controlling a robot that pushes the fat man over the railing? And then there are other questions that come in where it comes to authority obedience, what goes into that direction, where they will ask people, for example, would you hire someone else, a hitman, to do it, And then you have an intermediate, so to speak. You're not directly doing it, right? You hired someone. For me personally, none of this could ever happen. I could never do it. I could never hurt someone through a middleman either. I could not be corrupted for no money. Okay, absolutely no amount of money. And this is where I probably stand very alone, because the vast majority of people, sorry that I have to break your bubble of denial about humans. The vast majority of humans are in the reptile brain. David Icke talks about this. This is obvious where this comes from. It's this idea of reptilian type of behavior. Not saying that reptilians are bad. Reptilians, like dinosaurs and Komodo dragons and crocodiles, for example, they do what they do. They're predatory living beings. They have to eat and so on. They're very fast reacting. They have to be in order to catch a prey. And if they have nothing to do with a human, as a matter of fact, they see human as danger, they'll kill humans, of course. They'll eat them. There's a lot of poachers out there that are trying to kill the crocodiles, so this is an ongoing war, but the responsibility is with the poachers, not with the crocodiles. They don't know better. Okay? They're basically just trying to survive. And the poachers don't need to do this. They are corrupt humans. Okay, so this is exploitation of the worst. But so the reptile is not bad, right? But we have the reptile brain in our brain as well. We have that the brain stem, that is under the limbic system, the very rudimentary brain stem, the very first part of the brain is the reptile brain. We still have that in our brain. It hasn't grown out. Okay, I guess it still was somewhat necessary in evolution, right? Where that just brings me to the train of thought of maybe this reptile brain part, the brain stem, maybe if we didn't have that, we would handle things much differently, much kinder. So, but that brainstem, it seemed to be necessary for survival, for any evolution, for human evolution, for other animal evolution. Okay, so orca whales, for example, also, so. And many other animals who obviously have that, it's a predatory instinct and all of that. And then humans didn't need to do these kind of things in order to survive anymore. They became farmers. They became settled in settled places, settlement land, okay, where they homesteaded it and where they stayed for the rest of their lives, and where they bred animals and so on. All of this is cruel, but then they didn't use that reptile brain anymore, but it's still there. So obviously it's still there, and our evolution is still very, very young, obviously. So if the human species does survive its own demise, the imminent demise threat that we are in right now, if some people call it a bottleneck situation, if they make it through this bottleneck of evolution where they don't completely destroy themselves and other species, which they're in the process of doing right now, but if they somehow survive this through whatever lucky event that comes in, okay, ETs that help us, or the singularity with AGI and ASI robots and drones, or some kind of epiphany in people that suddenly happens, or some kind of virus that erases that brainstem. I don't know if that's possible, without becoming unconscious. So I'm not an expert on that. Or doing something that makes people stop being corrupt, right? So if some kind of divine intervention comes in, and they survive it, and they proliferate, and they become intergalactic species, okay, or they settle on different planets, and the evolution continues. People on Mars will become taller. People on Venus will become like balloons, like gas balloons. I'm just making this up, But the evolution will continue. Evolution continues either way, whether we're here or somewhere else. We are constantly evolving. You don't notice it because this is a very gradual process. I'm already quite evolved Like my little toe has almost no more toenail. Okay. My other toes, they have, when I cut my toenails, I'm always shocked to see how much of the toenail I cut off leaves almost no toenail. There's a tiny little nail bed left, like just a sliver. That's evolution. Okay, so you take it further, eventually there'll be no more nail beds. Okay, there'll be no more toenails, no more fingernails, and they'll be just like this here. Okay, on both sides. Or maybe even squarish fingertips. Right? I still have a bit of a frog type of hand. We all do. If you look at frog hands, they're quite similar. So, but I mean that's how you see our evolution. Obviously, we come from amphibians, and then reptiles, and then mammals. So, but it continues on. Okay, the hand will become, where the fingers become shorter, the fingers will be all in one line with each other, not at different lengths. And the fingertips can become cubic. So, I mean, the possibilities are endless in the direction we can evolve. I don't want to make the video too long. Now, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1. The blue god has spoken and has said, spot on, we are on the right train track here. Okay, peace and love, take care.